In a mountainous region of British Columbia, Canada, a pair of pilots cross the region's enormous lake while carrying an oil drill created by an industry called Alaskoil. During the journey, the helicopter suffers a critical failure in its structure, and realizing that they will have no chance of getting out of the situation, the men prepare to make a water landing. At the same time, the executives in charge of the operation analyze the site of the accident and try to understand how the aircraft could have been destroyed so quickly. In addition, the men notice that the drill ended up sinking hundreds of meters into the lake, at a depth that no diver could reach. At the crash site, the pilots begin to struggle to escape from the helicopter cabin, which is being watched by a mysterious woman standing on a cliff near the lake. As soon as the aircraft rises to the surface, the pair quickly swim towards dry land, but before they can get away, they realize that they are being chased by some sea creature. Seeing this scene, the mysterious woman becomes extremely excited, and after opening a package containing a large salmon fillet, she throws the food onto the shores of the lake. Irritated by all the commotion, the head of the company orders his employees to call Campbell, the designer of the device, because if they don't find him, they will lose billions of dollars in oil. Far away, Mac and Campbell arrive home after a family outing, and the boy is excited to discover that his father is going to take him to Florida's famous amusement parks. However, before they can enter the house, the pair are surprised by Alaskoil executives, and Jim explains the current situation to the employee, but he says he's on vacation. Despite this, the men say that his boss has ordered him to return immediately, and realizing that his father is going to trade him for work once again, Mac rushes into the bedroom. Trying to calm him down, Campbell apologizes for the unexpected and promises that as soon as it's over, he'll take him to all the parks he wants. The man also invites his son to accompany him on the mission, and after traveling by plane to the location, the trio is met by Custer. With all the equipment gathered, the group sets off towards the lake in their convoy of vehicles, carrying the large submarine that will be used to rescue the drill. When they arrive at the pier, Jim starts preparing the raft, while Custer talks to his friend Bob Anderson, an old man who works as a kind of security guard at the site. As they approach, Campbell hears the man talking about a creature called mee-snee, and curious about the subject, he asks what it is. Bob then replies that this being is known as the Giant of the Waters, an indigenous mythological monster that resembles the great legend of the Loch Ness Monster. Although they don't believe that story, Bob says that Norma, Custer's cousin, has always believed in the creature's existence, and to this day she often throws salmon fillets into the lake so that she can feed it. At this point, Jim says they're ready to leave, and during the car journey, the old man hands over an old photograph of mee-snee, saying that the only people who claim to have encountered the monsters are the local natives. Sometime later, the group arrives at the residence where they will spend the days during the mission, and are met by Mrs. Coogan, who takes Mac to his room. Realizing that he will be forced to stay in a room themed for girls, Mac becomes indignant and throws one of the teddies away. The next day, the group gets all the equipment they'll be using during the mission, and during the preparations, the locals begin to mock them, saying that they won't be able to capture mee-snee. Soon after, Custer asks about Mac's mother, but Campbell says that his wife perished about 2 years ago, and the man replies that he's sorry to hear that. Trying to cheer up his companion, the native tells him that they should invite the boy to join them on their boat, but Campbell refuses, saying that his son is still too young. At the cottage, Mac looks around trying to find something to amuse himself, and when he comes across a telescope, he decides to climb up on a chair to use it. As he does so, the boy realizes that he is being watched by Norma, and soon afterwards, he comes across something moving around the lake. Suddenly, Mac is startled by Mrs. Coogan, who explains how he can focus the telescope's image. However, the distraction ends up making the boy lose sight of the creature, and he asks who the woman is who was watching him. The old woman replies that Norma is known to have gone mad over the years, since she lost her husband in an accident a few years ago, where the man ended up drowning. Mac asks the woman about the legend of mee-snee, and Mrs. Coogan tells him that according to the indigenous people, the creature usually travels through the region using underwater tunnels that connect the lake with the open sea. Upon hearing this, the boy reveals that he saw something moving in the water, but the woman doesn't believe his words and leaves to prepare breakfast. Far away, Campbell and his companions launch the electronic scanner into the lake, and the man is disbelieved when he sees how deep the cracks are. Just then, the group comes across an approaching boat, and as they head out, Campbell is surprised by Laura, an environmental officer who protects the lake. Annoyed by the explosions caused by the team, the woman asks if the men are taking care of the welfare of the animals present in the lake, and if they even have a permit to carry out the mission. Jim quickly picks up the documentation they have received to carry out the search for the equipment, and as soon as she receives the papers, Laura leaves, leaving Campbell extremely confused. At one of the entrances to the lake, Bob is visited by Watkins, who claims that all these practices are causing great damage to the environment. However, the old man is undeterred and explains that all they are doing is trying to recover some equipment that was lost in the lake. Trying to defuse the situation, Watkins orders Campbell and Jim to come and talk to him, but Bob replies that the men are already on a mission and can't be interrupted now. On the other side of the lake, Mac rides his bike to the shore and throws a stone to try and attract the attention of some creature, but to no avail. Suddenly, the young man is surprised by a native girl, who claims to know that the boy has come from the city. Curious, Mac asks if the girl has ever visited a city before, but she explains that she doesn't want to, and leaves, followed by her dog. Despite this strange interaction, the boy decides to leave, and in the middle of the lake, Campbell prepares to go down in the submarine with Custer, while Jim takes care of the control panel. At the same time, on the pier, Watkins orders his partner Sam to follow the group along the shore, keeping out of sight so as not to be noticed. Trying to find something to amuse himself, Mac pedals up to one of the mountains and starts exploring the place, without even noticing the landslide danger sign. At the bottom of the lake, Campbell says they need to keep going down, and although he's controlling the panel, Jim ends up getting distracted by the television, where he's watching a field hockey game. Thanks to this, he doesn't notice the change in the sonar images, which detect a creature approaching the area where the submarine is. As the minutes pass, a storm begins to form in the skies, and while observing his surroundings, Mac stumbles into a hole. Curious about the depth of the hole, the boy drops a small stone inside and decides to walk away when he notices that the noise of the object falling was much longer than he expected. At that moment, Custer realizes that they are not alone in that place, and at the same time, Mac comes across Norma, who is preparing some fish while singing in a sinister way. Trying to prevent the woman from finding him, Mac runs for cover, but just then he notices that the native woman has already left. Suddenly, the submarine begins to receive several attacks from the creature, and Campbell orders Jim to bring them back. In the middle of the forest, while trying to get home, Mac is startled by a bolt of lightning, and thanks to this, the boy ends up falling into the hole, which takes him through a tunnel to the lake. In a panic, the young man returns to dry land as quickly as possible, and soon afterwards, he is surprised by Norma. Realizing that she has saved Mac's life, the woman orders him not to tell anyone about the monster's existence, otherwise the creature will be hunted down and eliminated. Frightened by everything he's hearing, the boy runs back home, and minutes later, the search party examines the recording from the submarine's camera. Noticing that Custer doesn't seem to be impressed by the unwelcome visitor, Campbell asks him why he's so quiet, and the man replies that he's used to this kind of situation. After this, the native leaves the cabin with Bob, and taking advantage of the fact that they are alone, Jim goes to Campbell and tells him that Custer is hiding something. Despite this, the men decide to call off the search for the rest of the day, and before his father comes home, Mac runs to put his bike away so he can pretend that nothing has happened. Just then, the boy runs into Mrs. Coogan, who says she has been extremely worried about his whereabouts over the last few hours. Trying to calm her down, Mac begs the old woman not to tell his father anything, and convinced by the young man's words, she decides to keep it a secret. Shortly afterwards, Campbell appears and asks how things went at the cottage, but Mrs. Coogan says that everything went well. As soon as his father starts analyzing the recording on his laptop, Mac asks if that could be the monster the locals talked about, but the man doesn't believe a word of it. At dusk, Bob is watching a field hockey game in his cabin, when he is suddenly surprised by Watkins, who knocks him out with a single blow. The man then climbs into the boat and destroys part of the submarine's structure. In the morning, Campbell and Jim rush to meet Bob after finding out what happened, and the old man tells them that apart from them, the only person who ever got close to the site was Watkins, an environmental conservation officer. The pair quickly realize that the man is in fact an imposter, and at the cottage, Mac prepares to carry out another exploration of the region and receives some food from Mrs. Coogan before setting off. During his walk, the boy comes across the same girl he had met the day before, who introduces herself as Pawnee. Realizing that Mac has come to the place to look for mee-snee, the little native girl asks to accompany him, and takes her dog Popeye along with them, so that they can find the creature more quickly. Pawnee takes the boy to the hiding place where Norma usually leaves her food, and as soon as they enter the hole, the pair slip into a large cave. After recovering, Mac hands his friend a sandwich and throws another into the water to attract the creature's attention. In a few seconds, a few jets of water shoot towards the pair, and thanks to his fright, the boy drops his frisbee on the surface of the lake. However, Mac realizes that the object is heading back in his direction, and as he pushes it back, he manages to attract the attention of mee-snee, who appears right in front of him. Frightened, The youngsters start screaming, and as soon as the creature approaches, Mac watches it for a few seconds, and is amazed to realize that the legend of mee-snee is completely real. Then, due to the creature's roars, Pawnee begins to scream, causing the monster to retreat back into the depths of the lake. Excited by what he has seen, Mac runs back home and tells Mrs. Coogan about the existence of mee-snee. Upon hearing the story, the old woman tries to calm the boy down, saying that it might be better to keep the creature's existence a secret, as this news could bring a lot of bad people to town. In addition, Mrs. Coogan says that not even Campbell should be warned about mee-snee, and says that the best option would be to talk to Laura, her niece. Discouraged by everything he's heard, the boy goes back to his room and gets ready for bed while the creature continues to wait for him to return to the cave so that they can play with his frisbee again. In the morning, Laura and Mac talk about mee-snee with Mrs. Coogan. Meanwhile, Campbell and his group prepare for another day of searching, feeling irritated after discovering that their submarine was actually sabotaged by criminals, who were possibly hired by rival companies. At the same time, Sam and Watkins use their submarine to hunt down their enemy's drill with sonar, but when they notice that the shipment may have fallen into a fissure more than 1,000 meters deep, they say they won't risk going down there. However, during their search, the pair are hit by an attack from a huge fish, which begins to surround them, and so that they can eliminate it, Sam fires one of the harpoons in the creature's direction. Unable to react, the animal is easily hit by the projectile, and the men celebrate having finished off a creature from the lake. Soon afterwards, the men notice that the drill is lying at the bottom of the lake, and decide to wait until Campbell retrieves the object, so that they can destroy it all in one go. Nearby, Mac and Pawnee take Laura to the entrance of the underwater cave, but when she realizes that she won't be able to get through the hole, the woman gives up trying and leaves with the girl. In order not to leave his new friend alone, Mac goes down to the place, and after throwing some food into the water, mee-snee appears throwing a jet of water. Soon after, the young man realizes that the creature doesn't look well, and noticing the harpoon stuck in its body, he removes his jacket so that he can try to remove the projectile from the animal's body. Despite the difficulty, Mac manages to get the harpoon out of mee-snee's body, sending the creature back into the water to recover from its injury. In the submarine, Campbell and Custer travel through the depths, and despite hearing some cracks due to the pressure, they continue their exploration. As soon as they reach the bottom, the pair come across the lost drill bit, and realizing that they will need to move the submarine to get closer to the object, Campbell starts the engines. However, this causes the metal claw to push the shipment, and Custer quickly rushes to grab it. After almost losing the object, the men manage to recover it, but before they can return to the surface, they receive a call on the radio from Watkins. The criminal reveals that he has a torpedo ready to be fired in their direction, and as they will have no chance of surviving if this happens, Campbell asks Jim to stop the submarine's ascent. Just then, mee-snee appears and sets off in the direction of Watkins' submarine, being noticed by everyone. Before they can react, the criminals are hit by the creature, and thanks to the impact, Watkins sets off the torpedo, which is fired in the direction of the pair. Jim quickly lowers the submarine to avoid the attack, but the cables are hit, causing the lights to go out. After a few seconds, Campbell and Custer manage to recover, but at that moment, they notice that the drill has just been released by the claw. As a result, the object falls into an even deeper part of the lake, leaving both groups disappointed. Despite the complications, Jim manages to pull his companions back to the boat, and away from there. Laura takes a ride in her car alongside Mac, so that they can talk about mee-snee. The boy tells her about his last interaction with the creature, where he was able to take care of one of its wounds, and believing that the whole story is nothing more than the boy's invention, the woman just ignores him. However, as soon as she notices the blood on Mac's jacket, Laura realizes that everything the young man is saying is true, and says that it's time to stop the criminals who are attacking mee-snee. Back at the lake, the group sets off to chase Sam and Watkins' submarine, which they fight non-stop while trying to escape towards dry land. What they don't realize is that Laura and Mac have already arrived on the scene, and the woman quickly runs to the criminal's truck, where she is surprised by Norma, who says that those men will pay for what they've done. The pair then deflate each of the vehicle's tires, and noticing that the groups are approaching, Laura asks Norma to come with her. However, the woman says she'll be fine, and continues painting the side of the truck while the environmental agent returns to her truck. When he arrives on dry land and realizes that his vehicle has been sabotaged by Norma and Laura, Watkins runs in a rage to the road, where he picks up a rock to smash the vehicle's window. Before he can do this, the criminal is hit by Campbell, who is grabbed and pulled to the ground, starting a hand-to-hand fight. After hitting his opponent with several punches, Watkins kicks the man into the water and tries to finish him off. Desperate, Campbell runs under the pier, managing to dodge one of the attacks, but he ends up being caught by the criminal, who forces his neck against the structure. At that moment, Watkins receives a blow to the head from Laura, causing him to fall to the ground, freeing his opponent. Realizing that he has no chance of winning, the criminal leaves, shouting that he will never be caught, since Campbell has no way of proving his involvement in the situation. With the confrontation over, Mac runs to hug his father, and together the group returns to the country house, where the boy tells them everything he has found out about mee-snee. However, Campbell doesn't believe the story, and fed up with his father's ignorance, the young man leaves. Noticing that he's not doing the right thing, the man rushes to apologize to Mac, saying that the next day, they'll look for mee-snee together. Hours later, the group talks about the creature in a restaurant, without even noticing that they are being spied on by Sam, who tells Watkins everything he's heard. The next day, everyone gathers on the boat to set off for mee-snee's cave, and when they arrive at the site, they wait until the creature appears. After throwing some fish into the water, the group manages to attract the animal's attention, and everyone is impressed to finally come face to face with the mythological being. However, Watkins prepares his grenade launcher to attack the group, and as much as Norma tries to warn them, they end up being hit by the explosive. Thanks to this, everyone ends up being knocked out, along with mee-snee, who falls into the water unconscious, leaving the native woman totally devastated. Watkins quickly sets off towards the boat and uses his axe to destroy the entire electrical structure. Soon after, the criminals lasso mee-snee with their submarine, and before leaving, the man decides to take Mac with them. As soon as they return to consciousness, Campbell realizes that his son has been taken, and after alerting the whole group, he takes out his binoculars, allowing him to see a helicopter approaching with a container. At that moment, mee-snee wakes up in despair and starts screaming as Mac watches him fall to the ground. At the same time, Sam notices that something seems to be surrounding the submarine, but before he can alert Watkins, they are surprised by an even larger creature, which lets out a mighty roar in their direction. The creature then frees its baby from its restraints, and taking advantage of the distraction, Mac jumps into the water to escape the criminals, and Campbell does the same to rescue his son. Realizing that they won't stand a chance against the thing, Watkins and Sam shout for the pilot to take them away, but the aircraft is surprised by the creature, which makes a powerful leap towards them, almost hitting them. The monster then uses its tail to attack the criminal's submarine, which they jump into the water to avoid being hit. Due to the panic, Mac begins to drown, leaving Campbell desperate, but before he falls unconscious, he is saved by mee-snee, who appears carrying the boy on his head. Thanks to this, the young man manages to reunite with his father, and so that he can take revenge on his enemies, the colossal creature begins to swim in circles around them, causing Sam to be pulled into the center of the whirlpool. Frightened, Watkins shouts for the pilot to come closer, and jumps into the container to try to escape, but is stopped by the creature, which swallows part of the structure. Despite trying to gain altitude, the aircraft doesn't manage to win in the contest of strength, and the container's support cables end up snapping. Trying to survive, Watkins clings to everything around him and desperately screams for the creature to go away. To finish off the criminals, the animal pulls the helicopter with all its might, and the impact causes a huge explosion on the surface of the lake, eliminating Watkins and the pilot in the same instant. Relieved that it's finally over, the group goes to the side of the boat to help Mac and Campbell, at which point mee-snee appears with the drill bit in its mouth, returning the object as a token of thanks. At that moment, the colossal creature appears in front of the group, but before they can be attacked, the baby approaches to stop it, showing that those people were responsible for it still being alive. The creature then gives up attacking the team, and after showing its gratitude, it begins to move away. Finally, the mee-snee baby makes a huge leap in front of the boat, and so that his friend can leave, Mac says goodbye to him, asking him to take care of himself from now on. With the animal safe, Campbell hugs his son, and concluding that the drill will only be used for environmentally destructive purposes, the group decides to dispose of the object, throwing it into the depths. Soon after, several mee-snees appear around the lake, and Custer realizes that Norma was right all along, since all those creatures have always existed, and from now on, they will protect the lake together with the town's newest inhabitants. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.